tonight is how do I learn to know myself and my own emotions? How does that impact how I behave towards other people, right? And that can be positive or negative impact. And then we're going to learn how to manage those emotions, both our own and others, especially when we're under pressure. Why is it important? So I sent this quote out to you in the initial email because I think it's a great indicator of why we want to spend time focusing on this, right? So Warren Bennis is kind of a leadership guru and organizational development expert. And this quote is from him. So emotional intelligence, more than any other factor, more than IQ or expertise, accounts for 85 to 90% of success at work. And you can think of it as classroom work, you can think of it as on the field of play, in your relationships, in your personal life, and so forth. IQ is a threshold competence. You need it, but it doesn't make you a star. Emotional intelligence can, right? So successful performers and successful leaders have the ability to deal with other people effectively and manage your relationships effectively, and that's what emotional intelligence is. And so as we think about how can I get better, right? You're in this room right now, you're on your teams here at Northwestern because you have some type of IQ within your program, right? So you understand what you need to do to be successful on your field of play. You're able to develop those skills physically. You're fast or you're strong or whatever it is, right? You have those skills. Now we're going to get you kind of the emotional part of it that helps you be leaders within your teams and kind of take your team to the next level. So tonight we're going to get started with some of our homegrown experts here. So women's soccer head coach Micah Moynihan, head baseball coach Spencer Allen, and head softball coach Kate Drohan are going to come up and they're going to share some information with us about emotional intelligence, how they've developed it within themselves. I think, so we have 19 head coaches here. These are three of the very best, in our opinion, when it comes to emotional intelligence and how they manage their teams and their players and student athletes. And so Maria's going to kind of run them through a little panel tonight.
Great, a little better? Thank you. Excellent. So as Kristen mentioned, we have three amazing individuals here today, and we selected these individuals for an incredibly specific reason, right? You've heard us say over and over again that leadership is a journey, right? Becoming a great leader isn't a destination and isn't like completing a certificate program and, yeah, so I'm a great leader, right? It's actively engaging in your leadership development, being committed to it, putting the care, the time, and intention. And the three people that you see here today have done that. They've been a part of and they've created cultures of excellence. They have committed to their leadership development, and whether they are developing other leaders or working with individuals like us, putting on leadership institutes, they play a huge role in what we do here day to day. And so we're going to give them an opportunity to share some insight on what they believe to be the importance of emotional intelligence and leadership. If you have a question, ask. This isn't an incredibly stiff panel that doesn't require interaction, okay? So take advantage of this opportunity. As Kristen mentioned, taking advantage of the opportunity of the individuals that are in this room. I challenge you also to take advantage of the individuals that you will work with throughout this Leadership Institute. Okay? Sound good? So, Kristen introduced you, but can you share just a little bit about each of you, your roles here, how long you've been at Northwestern? The old lady? Yeah.
No. My name is Kate Drohan, and I got to Northwestern in 1998, and I've been the head coach. This is my 18th season, so I was an assistant coach for a short time. And then I was named the head coach in 2001. I love this place. This is home. I love everything that we stand for here with our academic mission and how that translates onto the field. And I just feel really honored to work here.
I've been here the next longest. It feels like I just got here yesterday, but I've been here 7 years now. We just finished, I think, our 7th season. And I don't know, I've been coaching for 19 years at another school, kind of a mid-major, and when I was approached about Northwestern, it was kind of one of those, like, everybody's heard of Northwestern, and knows the academic reputation, and I think the potential that exists here, and I was very excited about it, and very happy that I made the move. I think you have something here, and you probably don't even realize, you know, a lot of you yet, how fortunate you are. But I've been at a few places. I was a captain of my college soccer team, but I didn't really know what it meant to be a captain. We didn't get anything, no instruction whatsoever about leadership. I don't know that my coach ever sat me down and said, this is even what you need to do in our team environment. So we had nothing. And in 19 years at Milwaukee, I don't think we've ever had anything related to leadership as far as an educational opportunity. I came here, and then immediately we started doing stuff with Kellogg, and there's so many resources within athletics and within the university of truly exceptional people that are more than happy to sit down and talk with you and help you, in any way that you want to develop. And I guess my last 2 cents would be, I hope there's many programs around the country that don't have anything like this. And you can look at it like, yes, this is a nice resume builder and it's going to help me get a good job at someplace in the future, but it can do so much more than that, and it can help you create the future that you want and really be a powerful individual and leading others down the road. And use it wisely, take advantage of all the resources and really invest. It will pay big dividends in the future.
All right, Spencer Allen, been here, going on my 4th year here. I took a little different route. I was at 6 different schools as an assistant, as well as another stop as a professional scout with the Detroit Tigers. And so bounced around a lot. My wife did not like me because of that, but yeah, same. I was looking. I was down at Illinois and had an opportunity to look at what Northwestern. I know, right? Just 1 year, though, only 1 year. Looking what Northwestern was building, and took a leap of faith, and it's just been unbelievable as you guys are all seeing kind of the fruits of the labor with this building. Just really the direction that this university as well as athletic department is heading. It's just been it's been awesome. So glad to be here.
So your paths have all been incredibly different, which I think is amazing, and also why we've asked you to be here tonight. But can you share a little bit about how emotional intelligence plays a role in managing a team successfully?
I'll start. So again, one of the things in looking at that question, the thing that I really looked at was starting at the end goal, right? Is as you look at a team's dynamic, ultimately we're trying to get individuals as well as staff members on our teams to operate at a very high level with ultimate confidence, self-belief, and playing in a flow state, right? Fitz says trust yourself, right? And I'm sure each one of your teams has some type of motto. So that's the goal. So and my teacher background in me, when I backward chain to that question is I then go, okay, well, what, emotional intelligence, how can that affect it? And me understanding and making sure that I'm in touch, right, with my emotions, and that I can self-evaluate, and that I can make sure and understand how I'm reacting. It starts there, right? And then, most importantly, being able to manage the different relationships that are going on within a team is just, it's so crucial. It's so crucial when that, so I think that's something that when I look at that, and when I that question was actually really good for me to kind of, again, self-evaluate as one, how am I doing in this area? I think that's really important. And I think the question says, is it important? I think it's crucial, right? Is that if you do not have that ability as a leader, right, then it's going to trickle down into your teams, and ultimately you're not going to have success.
I think when I think about emotional intelligence, in particular relative to leadership, right? I think it starts with maturity. And maturity is about understanding who you are as a person, kind of what your core values are as a person, and hopefully we're in line as a team, right? So what Kaylee believes in is it's important for her as an individual and as a player. She chose Northwestern because our values are aligned, right? So we can continue to help her grow as an individual while she's playing softball, right? That's like what we do. So that maturity then feeds into the team context in such a way where you can be vulnerable to learn, right? We fail so often in all of our sports. You got to pick yourself back up again and get after it again, and that's hard to do, especially when so many of us student athletes on this campus have had such tremendous success, right? You are the highest achievers coming out of your high school, and now all of a sudden you're thrown into this group, and we're pushing you and stretching you as coaches, and we want to put you in a situation where you might fail, and then figure it out, and then you grow as a player and as a person. So that requires a tremendous amount of maturity so you can build confidence instead of letting that negative voice in your head saying, I can't do it, you know, and go down that negative path. So in the context of leadership, and especially in learning, I think that emotional intelligence is really important. That's part one. And then number two, if you're like, okay, I can function on my team now, I get what our coach is asking us to do, now I want to be a little bit more responsible for winning. So now I want to lead this group. So how can you as a leader then be, okay, I commit to being consistent in how I show up every day. So your emotions are steady so that your teammates know what they're going to expect from you as a leader, and they can kind of lean on you when they haven't figured it out yet. So you show up the same way every day at practice. That's like step number one. And then I think the next step, which is I think the hardest thing that we ask our young players to do is to hold each other accountable. I think you've had such little practice in that area. You haven't been asked to do that a whole lot, right? You've been asked to build this resume to get into college and to be recruited by us, right? You've built this great resume, and all of a sudden you get here and we're like, wait a minute, you got to hold each other accountable. You're like, I don't have that, you know. Oftentimes we find that we've got to then teach our players what that looks like, to hear it and to say it. And when our players really understand what that's all about, then I think our emotional intelligence is really high as a unit. So that's when I think about it in the context of our program, that's what I think is the biggest difference maker and the biggest impact you can have as a leader.
I don't have a ton to add to that. That's great. You know, I think at the beginning there was a quote by some gentleman talking about IQ and the difference between that and emotional IQ. And I read a lot, you know, very much still learning myself, and even though I've been doing this for like 26 years now. And everywhere you read in leadership manuals and, you know, all different types of books, you just keep hearing emotional intelligence over and over and over. And I think the foundation of that lies in the fact that we exist all together. You know, whether you're on a soccer team, an individual sport, a community, everybody's success depends on other people. You know, nobody stands alone. And you have to be able to figure out other people and how to work with other people. In our program, we have a saying, bringing out the best in each other. It's kind of all over the place for us in our locker room and stuff. And if you want to be a successful team, you find ways to do that. And the only way you can do that is if you are aware of other people and you know how to manage those. I would say some of my early failures as a coach would be I lacked patience, and I wasn't good at reading what other people were feeling and thinking. And I too often jumped to conclusions and made assumptions that were not accurate. And sometimes you can look, you know, you might be good at reading somebody's body language, but it doesn't always tell the whole story. And what I've learned is, like, as a leader, you have to be very stable, you have to be very calm. You can't jump to conclusions, and you have to go in first asking questions and finding out more information. And then from there, you know, you start to build a relationship, but you gain understanding of what's going on, and then you can attempt to fix it. And too often, I think we look at a situation and we make assumptions about what's going on that might not really be the reason. I just had a meeting with a player today who she gave a reason, you know, she stated something, and I was like, ooh, that's not good, like you should want to do, and then once we got to the reasons for it, there was a whole different layer that I was missing, and an opportunity for me to maybe give some advice and try to help her through it. And I think we all need to do that as leaders.
That's great. So you all in some way, shape, or form spoke about growth. And one of the things that we've talked about, and if you can think back to the initial emotional intelligence session with Emily Harburg last year, one of the things that she focused on quite a bit is that emotional intelligence can improve, right? So you can grow within your emotional intelligence. It's not, growth is sometimes scary and not necessarily always fun, but it's really important. So can you all share a time throughout your career when you were challenged by a mentor or maybe a coach or even a colleague or a peer to grow within that emotional intelligence that you have?
I think the one thing for me, I stated earlier, I was at 6 different schools, and so the thing a lot of times for me that I would go to a program, right, and I think this relates to you guys, is a lot of you come from successful high school programs or maybe club teams, and at times we had success, we'd go to, you know, regionals, and then would move to another program and to another program, and a lot of times I would go in with the thought of it, hey, this has to be done this way, right? Because we won at this spot, or, you know, we have to operate this way, or I have to, and I think what I've really learned in my different stops is that there's no one way. And I think that's for you guys, that I think that growth is just, you have to try to figure out what is gonna work for you. Some of it is, and unfortunately, and some of you may have this too, of what, you know, not to do, whether it's dealing with some of your teammates of just, gosh, this is, you know, I can't just shut out my emotions, or I can't just, you know, gut through this and clam up and not talk. That doesn't work for me, you know. So I think that is one of the biggest things for me of growth. And then I go back to my mom as well, which again, I'm sure a lot of you have someone maybe close to you that has always been able to challenge you, and she just always was able to challenge me, and I was able to learn from her. But that's really where I think a lot of my growth came from, is just seeing that, gosh, there's a lot of different ways out there to do it, and not have that fixed mindset of this is the only way. And I think in a sense too, it can also kind of free you up and like, okay, I'm not exactly like Kate, or I'm not exactly like Mike. I have to find my way to learn, and hopefully that's something that, you know, you can continue to find your way as you move through, you know, school and beyond.
You know, similar to Spence, I found that the biggest impact I had when I was a young coach and sort of developing my system was I found a mentor. And when I was a young assistant coach, I thought finding a mentor meant I need to go find someone who I can learn how to hit a rise ball from, or how I can teach a better backhand. Like, that's what I thought a mentor, someone who had been in the game for a while, who I could learn the game about. And really, I'll tell you the story about what happened about a month after I got the head job here. And I was an assistant coach here, and I was a head coach. I was 27 years old. It was a really tough transition for me to kind of establish our own, a different system that was in place. So a professor came into my office and said, I think you need my help. I'm like, okay, who are you and what are you talking about? He was a professor here at LOC, and he's like, just let me come to practice and I'll give you feedback on how you're running your practice. And I thought, awesome, this is great. So he would come to practice, and then I would buy him lunch twice a month. And he would just completely give me unedited feedback on how I was running practice. He'd be like, okay, you totally lost the team when you did this. And you were yelling at them because you were frustrated with yourself because you did a lousy job of explaining that drill, and you took it out at them. So this guy, I mean, he was tough. And at our first couple lunches, I would be like, well, yeah, but you know, and I was defending myself, right? I got really defensive. And then once I learned that it wasn't about me being defensive, but me being more vulnerable, and really understanding what a gift this was for someone to not have an agenda, and then I started going, wow, I can ask this guy questions, and he's not going to judge me. So it was this really safe place that I could go as a professional, where I was sort of learning my voice, right? I was trying to put things together, and he helped me work out a lot of stuff off the field so that I could be more organized for my team. And he was probably, he was the biggest influence of me as a head coach. So when I say find a mentor, that could be a peer. It could be a peer where you could go to and say, wow, he really yelled at me today. You know, did I deserve it? Or, you know, and someone who's going to give you that kind of honest feedback. And then as you go into your professional careers or beyond, I found that having someone who you can really go to that's removed of all judgment and you could be vulnerable, that's where you see the most growth.
Awesome. Takes a lot of courage to find a mentor like that, and it's pretty cool when you do it. Mine, I had so many, but impacted me in different ways, but probably going back to the patience thing. When I started coaching, it was kind of a weird situation. My mother was the head coach at a Division I school. She didn't grow up with the game. There's a long story behind it, but she eventually became a soccer coach. And in her first year of coaching at the collegiate level, she was diagnosed with cancer. She passed away the following year. She was only 47 years old, so I've already outlived my mother, which is kind of weird. But that left my sister in charge of the team. And this was a Division I program. My sister didn't even complete her school. She graduated, but she only played 2 years in college and dropped out to pursue journalism. so it's kind of a really weird situation. She said, Mike, can you help me? I had just graduated from college myself, so very, very young. I was young now, you guys probably wouldn't, but very young in terms of a career, and very impatient. And I imagine you guys know people on your teams that, I don't know, maybe a coach barks at them at practice and they make excuses and go and complain about it. Coaches that are young have a tendency to do the same thing. You go back after practice and you complain about players that didn't do this or didn't do that, and why don't they do this? And I was doing that when I was in the office with my sister, and I was like, yeah, we just didn't do, blah, blah, blah. And she was looking at me and she's like, Mike, you didn't show them how to do it. And I was like, yeah, but you should understand. Like, how can you not understand this? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that they couldn't get some really basic concepts. And she's like, they didn't grow up with the game the way you did. They're different from, and I don't know, I mean, we just went back and forth, and in the end, I was like, yeah, I'm an idiot. I need to be a little bit more open-minded and try to see it from their angle, and maybe, try to grow a little bit in patience. And that was tough for me, and fortunately it was my sister, and it was easy to hear, I think, from a family member. My mother had done that for me prior to her passing as well, where it just kind of opened up eyes. As kind of Spencer said, there's a lot of different ways to view things, and people see things from different angles, and it's trying to understand those. That's where you can have the breakthroughs in learning, is when you really understand.
So you have all been, in some way, shape, or form, a part of incredibly successful teams. And Kate, you touched on this a little bit, I think, with accountability. But what did you see from your team leaders that made that winning culture that was a huge part and certainly to the success of those teams?
There was a real belief in themselves, in each other, and in the program. That we believed in it. We believed in each other. And then with that, they had a real sense of humor about their work. And they didn't take themselves too seriously. And they had a lot of, we talk about trust and respect a lot. And they had a lot of trust and respect for each other, where they could have those difficult conversations. And they had them with each other, and they had them with me. And so that we just got better faster. And because of that belief they had in each other, they weren't afraid of the big moment. They would look each other in the dugout. We're down by 6 in the 7th inning. Okay, here we go again. And that's when you can elevate each other and pick each other up in that moment. And I'll just say that the final thing about it, what our leaders, especially on those teams, they didn't need to be right. They just wanted to solve problems. So, and that's what I think selfless leaders do. It's not about them being the person or having the power or it's not about them at all. They just want to solve problems, and they want to move the group forward as fast as they can.
I think, again, I hate to keep beating this one up, but again, bouncing around, one of the things that I've noticed when I would jump into a team, and the different teams that did have success, is that there was always 2 to 3 individuals who were very high on emotional intelligence and would really have just a good sense of how the coaching staff was feeling, as well as just a gauge of their peers, and be able to come in and again, like Kate was saying, have that tough conversation of, and say, Coach, hey, just listen, you got to back off, right? Or be able to turn around and say, listen, Coach is getting on us, right? And he's right, or she's right, okay? And we need to buckle down. And I think, again, just being able to have that gauge, because the easy way is just to say, turn around, oh, Coach doesn't like us, or, he's wrong, kind of like Michael was saying. But being able to have that gauge, and then having the courage to go either way, right? And I'll give you an example. 2017, I had 3 seniors walk into my office and say, Coach, we're not going to do this in front of the team, but what was said in the paper, in the Daily, Northwestern, what's going on? And I applauded those guys, right? I applauded those guys, because that was not an easy conversation to have, right? And basically I called them out and said that they had quit. And I'm glad that they were able to do that. But I know those same individuals were also able to turn around and say, guys, this is not it. This effort, focus, off the field, on the field, whatever it may be, we have to, and I just, on all successful teams, there was always one or two individuals that had that capability to go both ways and really look and just have a good overall feel for the team.
Yeah, I'd say something similar. You know, we had a player here that, you know, as we started to get more successful, she came in and, you know, she became a captain for us, and she, I'm even more Nandi at that, see her face all over the place here. But she was the first person in a leadership position here that came into us as coaches and said, this isn't working, you know, the way you're running one of the team policies. And it really wasn't something that we were even trying to run. It was something we were leaving up to the players, and they just, I don't know, there was just a miscommunication. They thought they were doing it for us. We thought we were doing what they wanted. And she was really the first person to come in, and I think every successful team that I've been a part of has people that can do what Spencer said. They can, the communication is free flowing, and you have to be able to trust each other to do that. And when I say trust, it's you know, that everything is handled with respect, but there's a trust that everything is in the best interest of the program, you know. And you can have disagreements, and you can think, you know, there might be two different routes that you can take, but when all the people are invested in the same thing, and everybody knows that we're working for the better of the whole group, and trust that, then whatever decision is made, I think people can go along with it, and then success follows. The other thing is, there's a book called, I think it's called The Captain Class. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but the guy did a lot of research, and he kind of followed some of the best teams in sports throughout history. The All Blacks being one of them, the New Zealand rugby team, and all of them. And one of the things that he found in that was that there was always some key players. It wasn't really the coaches. So as much as coaches get credit for successful teams, a lot of the times it's these key individuals that are really kind of nuts. They're just insanely intense. And when I think of the successful teams that I've played on and that I've coached, there are players like that just have this unbelievable passion for what they're doing, and it just inspires people around them. And then there's usually a couple of people that buy into it and are supportive of them in the team environment, and then that gets everybody kind of going. But to have that passionate individual that just wears it on their sleeve every day and shows, I think does so much for the team.
So everyone in this room completed an emotional intelligence assessment, which I didn't know existed until recently, and it's fascinating. But when they go through and spend some time with this assessment, it's going to give them some real feedback as to where they are from an emotional intelligence standpoint, and then also give them tools on how they can improve their emotional intelligence. So with that knowledge, do you have any final advice for this group as they embark on this journey to improve their emotional intelligence, or advice on ways that individuals like you, coaches, can play a role in helping them to develop that?
I'll jump on one thing, because it's coming up a lot lately for me in different things that I've been talking about with various people. But there's some books by Navy SEALs. There's one, I can't think of the title, but it has to do with taking responsibility for everything and ownership.
Extreme ownership.
Yeah, extreme ownership. Have you read that? Yeah, and it's really powerful because, I mean, the guy was in charge of a lot of things, and there's certain things that go wrong within, you know, the military construct, and I mean, you look at it, he could easily make excuses. Well, these people didn't follow through with what they were supposed to do. I told them, I laid it all out, they still didn't do it, and in the end, he would say, my fault as a leader. The buck always stops with me. You know, I can't point fingers anywhere else. It's always my responsibility to make it work. And I think as a leader, that's something you have to have. As soon as you start making excuses, if you don't have the team environment that you want, what are you doing about it? You know, why does it exist? If you don't have the relationship you want with your coach, what are you doing about it? Are you just sitting around complaining about it? Are you taking some action and trying to improve it and figure out ways to make things better? But that idea that you got to own things and figure out solutions, it's really the only way to get things done.
and that's spot on. This is, I think, as a coach, one of my biggest responsibilities to teach our players. And, you know, as a woman, it's made me a better mother too. So I take these things that I talk to my players about all the time, and I apply it outside of my career. And I'm really grateful that I'm in an environment like this where I'm constantly thinking about it and studying it and figuring out ways to teach it. But, you know, there's no magic sprinkle that's put on your head for you to be a good leader. It's not like this gift that you're born with. There are daily things that you can practice and work on that's about basic engagement, taking responsibility, being in charge a little bit more, taking a little bit more ownership, and then all of a sudden, you're the person that everyone's relying on, and you're making your team go. So that's my advice, is to don't look at it as this big magical thing. It's small things you do every day as a leader that will make your biggest impact.
I think maybe just to wrap it up too, I think that the biggest thing, and it's great that you guys did this assessment, but, and it gives you some instant feedback, but constantly self-assessing and just taking a look at yourself and start with this assessment. If it tells you that you're weak in an area, go attack it. You know, and I'll be the first to admit, I did the first 3 years here, I was not intentfully, right, with like almost like teaching like a class, building leaders and working on the mental game, right? And that all came from as I was looking through and I'm going, wait, I'm talking about it in a speech, but that's not intentful. So that was me looking in, going, I'm doing my team a disservice right here, right? And I think each and every one of you can go and then constantly self-assess, because on the flip side of that, there's some things that each one of you here does really well, right? And it's just kind of second nature, whatever that may be, right? Each and every one of you has some skills that I don't want to say that you're born with, that you probably just developed, right? And that's the beauty of it, is that you can develop into a good leader, and that's why we're here tonight, and it's awesome to see. But I think it just constantly starts with self-assess, go attack. Self-assess, go attack. And, you know, like I said, like Kate said, you're going to look up in 10 years and you're going to be, you know, successful, maybe a husband and wife, you know, entrepreneur, CEO, just whatever it may be. And then you're still going to be back to self-assessing and go and attacking, to trying to just continue to get better. So I think that's what I would say.
That's great. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Do we have a second for questions? Anyone have any questions for you?
What Spencer just said about reassessing, when you read a lot, there's presidents, political figures, business leaders across so many different industries, the people that are writing books, it's always amazing to me the methods that they have for self-assessment, and they're constantly doing it, whether they're journaling or coming up with plans and following them and writing it out. Like, I didn't get any of that when I was a captain in college. Like,